What's good, fam? Welcome back to the channel. This is Constant Sports. I'm your host, Constance. Now, we would say the big tournaments, big conferences, their tournaments are over for the conference championships. Um, Overall, we had some really good games throughout the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals. We got some really good games out of those. Which doesn't surprise me. A lot of the conferences had some pretty heavy hitters in it. Obviously, we did have some surprises, especially in the ACC with Notre Dame not making it to the finals, and pretty much making it to the finals and possibly winning the ACC. But we're gonna start off with the ACC. Why not? Because it had Duke and NC State battling. Duke came out on top, which shouldn't really be a surprise because Duke has been winning the ACC tournaments for the past years. Um, they're a very good squad. They move the ball, they work together. They have a lot of energy and they're very well coached. Um, NC State, obviously, one of their players went down. I don't see that affecting them for the tournament. I feel like they'll be fine. They'll have all of their pieces back together. NC State is a very good and dangerous team, especially when it comes later on in the NCAA tournament. They can definitely have an opportunity to take down maybe one of the heavy hitters, along with Duke. I believe that Duke will make a run as well. ACC has pretty much three teams in there that could beat any team on any given day. So I think that I know everyone is looking at SEC, which is obvious, right? They have a lot of teams that will go pretty far in the tournament. And then you'll have the Big Ten just because of UCLA and USC. So don't want to not be looking at the ACC and not only be looking at Notre Dame. Um, Next tournaments we're gonna hit up is the SEC. South Carolina obviously back in the finals. Texas took down LSU in the semifinals, um, making their way to the SEC championship game, right? Texas's first year being a part of the SEC, they pretty much came in and showed out for this whole season. But when it came to that South Carolina game for the finals, they pretty much looked like they did. I want to say it was a few weeks ago. I talked about them only scoring 20 points in the first half. And I said that was something that could not happen, especially when they're playing some of the bigger teams. And South Carolina is that big team that you definitely do not want to score the bare minimum in the first half and think you're going to come back in the second half and minimize their scoring while also trying to put up enough numbers to beat them. And it definitely did not happen. Um, I think that Texas' biggest issue is the fact that on a lot of these games, Booker isn't consistent. And I know she's had some very big games, right? For the past 2 years, she has pretty much been that main person for Texas. But for her to have multiple games where she scores little to no points in the first half and then exhaust herself in the second half trying to make up for that, that's not a recipe for success. And I know she won the SEC Player of the Year, which a lot of people were up in the air about should she have won and shouldn't she? But the um, the product that she showed on Sunday in that game was not what you would expect from the SEC Player of the Year, especially in the SEC Championship game. SEC's fans and other players expect more, and usually they do get more. So that is definitely one glaring thing that Texas has to figure out. Rory Harmon, she did great. She pretty much played how she plays. She was a general on the floor and pretty much the whole SEC tournament. But yeah, Texas has to fix that. South Carolina continues to play their game. I am becoming more and more of a Kit's fan. played amazing this entire SEC tournament. She's been playing amazing pretty much in the whole season, especially in the later half of the season. She has really gotten a lot more comfortable with handling the ball. She has been their go-to player. And I know there's a lot of hype when it comes to Malaysia Folk Wiley, but I feel like what Kits gives South Carolina is totally different from what Folk Wiley does. She pretty much gives that spark, but Kits is a constant pressure and a presence on the floor. She's very hard to guard inside and out of the post. Um, and she's someone who knows now how good she really is and how much better she can be. So I think that to me is South Carolina and Coach Daly's best weapon when it comes to continuing on, especially in the NCAA tournament. So shouts out to South Carolina for winning the SEC championship again. Next conference we have is the Big Ten, the big game. Um, UCLA versus USC. Now, obviously, we know USC beat UCLA both of their times meeting in the regular season, and it was they beat them pretty significantly in the season, right? They were beaten by like 7 points, and then they beat them by double digits another game. But what? Uh, USC had this game, right? They came out, they were playing, they looked like USC. But what happened is pretty much what I've been saying, fatigue. The second half, that was a totally different USC team. Um, their legs wasn't under them towards the end of the third quarter, and pre the fourth quarter they could not hit a basket. They couldn't buy one. They couldn't trade for one or anything. They were really struggling to put points on the boards, while UCLA played like this was the first or the second quarter. They had high energy. They were pushing the ball more. Their defense got much better on Juju, and Juju was doing what she does, right? But she did not have much help from the rest of her teammates, and that's been something that USC has definitely been trying to work on for the entire season. But if they want to make it to Elite Eight, even in this, I would say even the Sweet 16, they have the whole team has to contribute more, and they really need to fix the fatigue issues. Um, Understanding when to pull players out to rest them, even if it's for 2 minutes or even if it's for a minute, just sitting them on the bench to get off of their feet and catch their breath is definitely something they need to work into their game plan. If not, something like this is going to happen again. And UCLA won the game that they needed to win, which was the conference championships to automatically get their ticket punched, right? And have them in that bid for the number one seed. Um, so shouts out to UCLA for finally showing up and doing what needed to be done, right? Next is the Big Ten, TCU versus Baylor. Uh, if you've been watching women's basketball, you know the last two seasons that TCU has had and has not been pretty in any way, right? They had a season when they won like one or three games. They they had volleyball players suiting up, going on for games. They had just students who just tried out playing just because their numbers wasn't where it needed to be to continue the season. So for them to turn around and beat Baylor for the Big Ten championship is pretty huge for them just from where they were to where they are now. Obviously, TCU has been a very high ranked team this entire season, but you still can't not think that the Big 12 belongs to Baylor just because Baylor has been so dominant in that conference for so long. So to even see Baylor make it to the finals is just a test of the athletes that come through that program and the ones who still continue to come through that program. Um, TCU is playing great ball. Obviously, they had that point where they kind of slumped down a little bit, but it seems like they found their way. But obviously, we still have a lot of basketball to go. So to see how they continue to build on this momentum winning their conference championship will help out. Hopefully, they build on it and they continue and they look like the team that started the season. So, congratulations to the TCU Horned Frogs. They definitely earned it, and it's amazing turnaround for that program. Last night, the big conferences ended, which was the Big East, which I really wouldn't say it's a big conference. People say it's a big conference just because UConn is in it, which I'm thinking might change. UConn is definitely in a conference that they should not be in. I don't see it changing because I don't really see UConn moving or wanting to move from the Big East. I know there was a lot of moves, obviously, with a lot of the Pac-12 sailors, and then you have, and their teams moving over into the SEC and all of this. I'm surprised that UConn hasn't moved, but for the women's portion, the women's basketball portion, I do believe they need to move just because they're blowing through their conference with no pushback. Um, they played Creighton for the championship, and Creighton was the number two team in their conference this entire season, right? But UConn would be the number three team, right? The number five team, and Creighton will still be the number 23 to 25. Um, so that's still a huge difference when it comes to the number one team in the conference and the number two team in the conference. Um, and then UConn ends up winning the finals by a sizable amount. So for they might need to look into that, but I don't see it happening because I think that would just change up the dynamics of the UConn basketball. You try to put them into another conference where they have more challenges, and you will see a dip in UConn's play for a little bit. And I might be wrong. You can possibly throw them into the ACC, and maybe there is no dip. But you have to think Notre Dame beat UConn this year, right? Definitely can't put them in the SEC. Obviously, UConn beat South Carolina, but you have to think about it. There's a possibility they might play South Carolina twice, or they might have to play Texas twice, or LSU, or Tennessee. These are all Tennessee is alone is a very big team for UConn to be going up against just because of their size and their style of play is totally different. Um, so I do believe it's something that everyone should look into. Will it happen? Probably not, right? Um, We still have some more conference championships that still need to finish up. Some of them are just now starting before the NCAA tournament officially starts to see who are those, because the champions of those conferences automatically get their tickets punched, and then everyone after that will get their bids as the bracket is announced. Who's going to have the number one overall seed? There's a possibility it could be South Carolina because of their strength of schedule, but really their strength of schedule is literally because they play in the SEC. Um, Not many SEC teams play big teams outside of their conference. UCLA did, South Carolina did. They played up against UCLA and they lost. So there is a possibility that it could either be South Carolina or UCLA as the number one seed. Either way, it'd be one of those two as one and two. Three would possibly be UConn, and then you'll have USC and all other teams flow into it. I know a lot of things will probably change, but it should be solidifying those top 10 at the minimum already. Uh, so we're pretty much just waiting for the brackets to come out to see who's exactly playing who. All of the teams know where they're playing at, and what brackets they're in. Um, but I do think this is going to be a fun tournament because I feel like there are more very, very good teams this year than have been in the past few years. And obviously, you have the ones that you're like, they're probably going to win, but there's so many teams that are like, there's a possibility, right? So please continue to watch these ladies play the game that we love Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know you guys' opinions on who's going to be making it, who's going to win it, who's going to be our teams for the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. Who do you think will take it all? Let me know down in the comments, guys. Peace, love, happiness.